Well, US President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that his administration is continuing negotiations with India to address trade barriers between the two countries. Now, this comes days after warning that India and Russia seem to have lost to China. Now, Trump, in a marked shift of tone, said that he looked forward to speaking to the Indian Prime Minister in upcoming weeks. He also expressed optimism that the two countries, India as well as US, could reach a trade deal. Remember that Trump last week had said that India had offered to reduce its tariffs on US goods to zero, adding that the proposal was late and that the South Asian country should have lowered its tariffs years ago. Well, breaking news coming in, US President Donald Trump on Tuesday said that his administration is continuing negotiations with India to address trade barriers between the two countries. Now, he's also added that, he is hopeful that the two countries will reach a conclusive deal. Well, on this, we have my colleague Vishal Vivek joining us on the telecast. Now, Vishal, Trump has made a statement in which he says that, he's hopeful that India and US will, come towards a deal. And he's also mentioned as to how, the two countries are still, negotiating, they're still in talks with one another. What is it that you're tracking on this situation?
So this is Donald Trump's second outreach, big outreach in the last few days. We remember, as you rightly pointed out, that last week he had spoken about the positive relationship between both India and US, long-term allies, and he has again extended the same courtesy this time. He has clearly mentioned PM Modi and said that he is a very good friend of the leader, and said that there will be direct negotiations starting really soon, probably in the coming weeks. That's what exactly he said. I'll quote him and say that I look forward to speaking with my very good friend Prime Minister Modi in the upcoming weeks. I feel certain that there will be no difficulty in coming to a successful conclusion for both our great countries. And he was talking about the trade deal that has been reported for the last few months or so, but there seemed to be a big hurdle as to the deal being finalized, because many trade barriers have crept up, the tariff issue has crept up, so that has sort of dampened the spirits of both the sides to sign to come to a conclusion as far as the trade deal is concerned. But this latest outreach from Donald Trump does signify a big turn of events, and says a lot about the US administration coming to the conclusion, coming to the negotiation table, because as far as Trump's deputies, Trump's advisors, top trade advisor Peter Navarro is concerned, the tirade didn't seem to stop. Even a few hours ago, Navarro almost spewed the same venom that he had been spewing for the last few weeks. But Trump seems to be handling this quite well, and he seems to have realized that India is a big-time ally of US, and there's no need to antagonize Delhi. And so the same thing has been told by many experts across the globe, that India is US's long-term ally, and the fact that Trump administration has single-handedly tried to ruin that relationship, that does not make any sense. So this seems to be an outreach by the US administration, and
right.
It will have to be seen how this unfolds now.
Right, and Vishal, you've mentioned Peter Navarro, and of course none of us are oblivious to the fact that Peter Navarro has taken regular jibes at India. Is it not, in a way, incongruent of the administration? Because, on one hand, he's a US president trying to extend an olive branch, and on the other hand, you're somebody like a Peter Navarro who's, taking repeated jibes at India.
And there was not just Peter Navarro. Scott Bessent had also been saying the same thing, that the fact that India buys cheap oil from Russia, that in turn propels the Ukraine war. Same rhetoric has been escalated to the next level by Peter Navarro, the top trade advisor of Trump. Scott Bessent in the last few weeks toned down his rhetoric and started speaking that India-US ties are long-term ties, and India has a very good relationship with Washington, so on and so forth. But Peter Navarro has continued his tirade, and even this morning,
right,
as we've been talking about, that he's done the same.
But absolutely, Vishal, Peter Navarro, like you mentioned, has taken repeated jibes, and this comes at a time when several of the other US administration top leaders have sort of changed, or had a shift in stance. Now, in your understanding, what could be the possible reason behind this shift in stance that's coming in from the US administration?
Well, the biggest one would be people across the globe have been saying, anyone who has observed India-US relationship evolve over the last 25 years, because that is the timeline when the US-India relationship, blossomed. one of the biggest allies that US has on the international stage is India. Experts, analysts, they've all been weighing, and even people in USA, the Democratic parties to be particular, they had been attacking Trump administration on all fronts. That why would Trump go on and ruin such a big relationship? So Trump could have listened to all that, but there are some reports suggesting that Trump also, on the other hand, could be trying to increase tariffs on China or India. This is not confirmed. Many reports in the US media and the UK media have been saying this in the last few hours, that Trump is silently trying to increase the tariffs on India. So we'll have to analyze what happens now. But Trump's overture, Trump's outreach does seem to point that the relationship is trying to calm down at the moment.
Right, absolutely, Vishal. You talked about India as well as US relations, and talking specifically about tariffs. Of course, the US Supreme Court is also going to hear a case in November when it comes to tariffs. Now, help us understand how exactly are these tariffs being viewed domestically when it comes to the United States.
Well, as I just mentioned, the Democratic Party, the main opposition party in the US, that has gone on a rampage against the US administration, particularly against Trump, and tried to calm him down, and also said that the fact that Delhi is a long-time ally of Washington is the sole reason why Delhi shouldn't be attacked on so many fronts, particularly on tariffs, because China is the biggest importer of Russian oil, and it has not attracted the same level of tariffs, whereas Delhi has attracted one of the highest level of tariffs in the world, 50% to be precise. And as far as these tariffs are concerned, they itself do not make total sense, because experts have clearly stated that these tariffs do not just affect India. Consumers in the US, common folks who go to the markets to buy stuff for their homes, even those condiments, those items could face a skyrocketing price. Many companies have already stated that they would be raising prices, such as Adidas, such as Mattel, the Barbie doll maker. These companies have already stated that prices in the US would rise. So the effect will be felt on both the sides. And on the other hand, many analysts have also said that Indian economy is quite robust. Indian economy is not that dependent on exports, so it will be able to handle these tariffs quite well. So this is all a long-term thing. We'll have to wait and see how these tariffs have an impact. But for now, we can say that these are some positive signs coming directly from the top of the US administration. So we'll have to see how New Delhi responds now.
Right, absolutely, Vishal. And of course, this is Trump's second outreach in 2 days. And apart from this, this also comes just a couple of weeks after the SU summit. So I have to ask you this question. How do you sort of view the geopolitical implications of, such a statement coming in from the US president himself?
Well, it does signify a lot, because China would be waiting, with bated breath for the next round of tariffs, because China has been granted reprieve one after the other, because 90-day extensions have been granted to China on 2 occasions, and it has right now, as far as I remember, 30% tariffs as far as the Chinese imports into the US is concerned. So clear double standards. So the fact that Trump is now trying to tone down his rhetoric and also trying to reach out to the Prime Minister directly after several attacks on Prime Minister Modi from the Trump side, will definitely have some sense of relief for the rest of the allies that have been attacked by the Trump administration, because it's quite fair to say that Trump has been quite vicious in his attacks on his allies, because it's not just India that has been levied these high tariffs. It's many other countries that have had to endure these tariffs, and many countries have a few countries actually have reached a deal with US, Japan, EU, Indonesia. So they're just a few in number. So we'll have to see how this changes now, because this does indicate that Trump could be ready to sign a deal, and India would also welcome this, because a deal would be beneficial for both the sides. As I mentioned, tariffs will not benefit as far as both Washington and Delhi are concerned.
But absolutely, Vishal, and you very rightly mentioned that it's not just India that bears the brunt of these tariffs. There's also, of course, Canada. There's also, of course, Brazil that enjoys as much tariffs as India. Let's, in fact, quickly listen in to what the US president had to say.
I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about. We just have moments on occasion. I get along very well with Modi, as you know. He's great. He was here a couple of months ago. In fact, we went to the Rose Garden and the grass was so soaking wet.
Well, on this week, my colleague Sakshi Bajaj joining us on the phone line. You know, Sakshi, clearly a shift in, of course, the US president's stance. This is the second outreach that he's made in the past 2 days. What exactly are you reading into this?
That's right, a significant shift coming in there from US President Donald Trump, with him saying that, look, his administration will continue negotiations with India to address the trade barriers between the two nations. Now remember, this comes right after the positive signaling we witnessed earlier, where of course he has hailed PM Modi and called him his very good friend. Prime Minister Modi also reciprocated that gesture really and said that, look, India-US ties are significant and they of course are looking at this. Now having said that, what are analysts and market experts and economists making of this? Well, NDTV has been speaking to analysts, and look, just after the positive signaling, of course, when market experts believe this is of course going to be a huge sentiment boost, as it were, initially. But beyond that, what does it say about the India-US ties going forward? Remember, economists as well as everyone alike was questioning that why are India-US ties and why is Donald Trump doing this? The impact that it will have on India-US ties, a relationship that has been worked on for decades. And now everyone saying that, look, this comment coming in from Trump that, look, talks with India will be successful, India-US will continue trade talks, is highly significant, and the timing of it very, very critical, because it means that, look, there is going to be a significant path forward beyond just the positive signaling. So this really is a first in a sense, because this is beyond the positive signaling, beyond the gestures, where he's definitely talking about trade talks. Now, India, remember, has very, very clearly said and has been very, very firm as far as their stance. And their red lines are drawn very, very clearly. India has been very clear about the agriculture sector. PM Modi has time and again said that, look, the interests of farmers, small MSMEs, and small companies really will not be compromised at all. So India's stance has been clear, but efforts really now seeing the fresh light of the day, and US President Donald Trump saying very, very clearly that trade talks will indeed continue and talks with India will be successful. So this really is significant, because this is a first after months of tariff tiff and months of Donald Trump really saying a lot and posting a lot on social media, as the world has seen.
But absolutely, Sakshi. In fact, I'm going to take this point about agriculture specifically first to my colleague Vishal. Now, Vishal, of course, Sakshi has also mentioned about, how in India and US's trade talks, if there were to be one barrier that was there, at least from India's side, that was regarding the agriculture sector. Because India's, always maintained the fact that, interests come first, especially when it comes to the interests of farmers. India's not going to compromise on that. Now, how big of a barrier has that been, and what exactly it is that's sort of hindering the trade talks between, of course, the two countries?
Well, as far as agriculture is concerned, India has been quite, stiff on it and not ready to relent, because it's a question of, crores of farmers that India has, and the fact that India would allow US companies to gain access to Indian market, that entails that could have a big burden on the Indian market. So that is why Indian authorities have been quite relentless in this and saying that they are not really ready to relent, and they won't be allowing access to the US companies. There could be some level of access, but they won't be allowing the level of access that that Washington actually wants, because that would mean rising prices for farmers, which the Indian administration would not like. And PM Modi has clearly spoken on that and said that there is no way that India would compromise with the farmers that work so hard and which feed almost all the country. So that's a point, that's a bone of contention as far as both the sides are concerned. That will have to be ironed out. The trade negotiations will start soon, as President Trump has just indicated. He said that in the coming weeks both the sides could come onto the table and start negotiating on the matter. But we'll have to see how this unfolds, because both the sides have been meeting meeting quite often in the last few months. Just about 1.5 months ago, US administration had sent its delegation to India, and there was a big level meeting. Even Piyush Goyal has gone to the US side quite a few times this year, and there seemed to be a regular outreach from both the sides and a regular positive statements from both the sides. Even Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had said a few months ago that trade deal is imminent any time. All of that did not happen because of these trade tensions, because of this sudden level of tariffs that were escalated to the next level by the US administration. But these fresh statements from the US president do seem to indicate that both sides could reach a middle ground, but we'll have to see how and when.
But absolutely, Vishal, we'll have to see where the trade talks reach, like you mentioned earlier, that of course,